What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Arman Tsarukyan talks about Islam Makhachev fight. With his UFC 300 win over Charles Oliveira, Arman Tsarukyan finds himself next in line for a crack at the lightweight title. While it's continued to look as though Tsarukyan will be getting his crack at the belt before the end of 2024, a 9-month suspension stemming from an altercation with a fan raised the question of when a fight between him and Makhachev would take place. In addition, ahead of UFC 304, where Leon Edwards will look to defend his title against Belal Muhammad, there's been quite a bit of talk of Edwards potentially defending his title against Islam Makhachev next, leaving Tsarukyan as the odd man out. During a recent interview with Red Corner MMA, Tsarukyan made it clear that regardless of whether or not he fights Islam Makhachev, he wants to fight for the belt. "We have a verbal agreement that I'm fighting for the title. I don't know if he was told this, but they told me I'm next in line. To be honest, I don't care if he moves up a weight class, just give me the interim title then, or let him vacate the title, and I'll fight for it. It's not about fighting Islam, I just need to become the champion." Tsarukyan also confirmed that he'll be shooting an anti-bullying video in order to have his suspension reduced from 9 months to 6. In doing so, he would then be eligible to compete on the UFC 308 card in Abu Dhabi on October 26th. While there's been talk of the Makhachev-Edwards fight down the line, the expectation is that the Makhachev-Tsarukyan rematch will take place on the card. Next up, let's take a look at MMA Community FURIOUS with the UFC. Ahead of the UFC 304 card in Manchester this month, the UFC has signed social media influencer and content creator Alice Ardelian to compete against Shauna Bannon, who was left without an opponent when Ravina Oliveira withdrew from their scheduled fight. Ardelian has a 9-5 record according to Tapology and an 8-5 record according to Sherdog. However, many fans aren't happy with the signing, given the fact that she's only beaten 3 fighters with the winning record according to Tapology. As Cage Side Press's Sean Bitter wrote, the UFC signing Alice Ardelian is a disgrace to the promotion. Probably the worst signing ever, and I'm not joking. Ardelian isn't a fighter, she's a TikTok star. Ardelian has a terrible 9-7 record. She's won her last 5, but against who? Such a shame that the best promotion in the world isn't caring about best in the world talent. As Claro Sports' Rodrigo del Campo Gonzalez wrote, so they hired a fighter with a large TikTok following who's 9-5. Has only fought 5 times since 2017 and whose 9 wins came against opponents that are a combined 9-12? Cool. He then followed it up pointing out that in addition to the UFC signing Ardelian, the promotion also released Nate Maness in a surprising move that was made amid a 2-fight win streak. He wrote, 5-2 in the UFC, coming off back-to-back wins to Flick and Mendonça. One of those losses was against Umar at 135, yet we're signing TikTok fighters. What is the UFC doing here? Another wrote, getting a contract off subbing an 0-3 ace. One member of the MMA community joked, they'd just be asking anyone now, huh? Another member of the MMA community wrote, some random lady from down the street, LMAO. One also joked, why does every new WMMA prospect look like a 34-year-old soccer mom they found at a bake sale? As to how her fight with Shauna Bannon will play out, only time will tell. Next up, let's take a look at Ariel Helwani shuts down UFC rumors. During the French broadcast of the UFC Fight Night Denver card over the weekend, the commentators seemingly revealed that the UFC 306 card at the Sphere would feature a headlining bout between Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria and a co-main event fight between Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili. The clip quickly began to circulate social media. However, on Monday's edition of the MMA Hour, Ariel Helwani shut down the rumors, revealing that the UFC isn't planning on having both of the aforementioned fights on the Noche UFC card at the Sphere.
There was never a plan to have those 2 fights headline the Sphere card, and as of right this second, that is not the plan. What I believe happened there, what I think happened there is, local broadcaster maybe is reading stuff, sees rumors, sees the wrong report, and just assumes it's fact. I think it was just a mistake. I think it was an honest, erroneous mistake. And unfortunately, it went viral, and now everyone's taking it as fact, as gospel.
As Helwani revealed, the current plan is for the O'Malley-Dvalishvili fight to headline, with Alexa Grasso expected to defend her title in the co-main event. Dana White also dropped some big news regarding the card while speaking on the Pat McAfee show, revealing that the event will only have 10 fights.
How many fights are going to be on the card? Do you know that?
We're going to do 10.
10? Is it going to be like a fight week? Type, like what type of card? Because you got to balance, right? Main events. But if you have 5 main events, how many main events? Or are you not worried about that?
There'll be a main, a co-main, and obviously this card will be very Mexican heavy.
Next, let's take a look at Dana White gives update on Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. Since the cancellation of the UFC 303 fight between Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, it has remained unclear when the two will compete inside the octagon. Initially, reports suggested that the UFC could potentially create a new event for the fight in August, September, or October. However, Dana White then shut down talk of the fight happening during that time frame. While McGregor recently revealed on social media that he had spoken with Dana White about a new date, it sounds like the UFC CEO is remaining non-committal on when the fight could take place. During a recent episode of the Pat McAfee Show, White spoke about the situation.
Yeah, that's the fight that needs to happen. We've been waiting for it. It's an awesome fight. It's a fun fight. And as of sitting here, right now, no, I don't have a date for it or a plan or anything like that. And obviously, me, the fans, and ESPN would love it to happen in 24. But we'll see what happens.
As Ariel Helwani revealed on the MMA Hour, the UFC has fights targeted for the UFC 306, 307, 308, and 309 cards, meaning that at the earliest, a bout between McGregor and Chandler could be on the horizon in December. Next, let's take a look at UFC Fight Updates. Ahead of this weekend's UFC Fight Night Lemos vs. Jandiroba card, let's take a look at today's UFC Fight Updates, starting with a heavyweight main event scheduled for UFC Vegas 95 on August 10th between Marcin Tybura and Sergey Spivak. This fight will see Tybura look to build on a March win over Tai Tuivasa, while on the flip side, Spivak will be looking to bounce back from a loss to Ciryl Gane back in September. Shifting gears and looking ahead at the month of September, Kevin Jousset and Brian Battle will compete at UFC Paris on September 28th. The welterweight bout will see Jousset look to build on a 2-fight victory streak inside the octagon, while on the flip side, Battle will look to return to the win column after a March bout with Angie Lusa, which was ruled a no contest due to an accidental eye poke. Next, let's take a look at Tom Aspinall fires back at Ciryl Gane. Tom Aspinall has been quite insistent that Ciryl Gane has turned down fights against him. Most recently, according to the interim champ, prior to the UFC booking his fight with Curtis Blaydes at UFC 304 in Manchester, the promotion reportedly offered Gane the fight. According to Aspinall, Gane turned the fight down, instead opting to film a movie around that time. Gane then fired back this week during a stream on Twitch, taking aim at the interim champion while defending himself. On Monday, during an appearance on the MMA Hour, Aspinall fired back at Gane.
I think what people need to understand is the UFC, and I don't want to, I'm sure Curtis is aware of this, the UFC didn't want me to fight Curtis. They wanted me to fight Ciryl, and Ciryl didn't want to. And that's, I don't know what's going on with his schedule. I have no idea. Like, the guy's living his own life. He's doing his acting thing. If that's what makes him happy and that's what he wants to do, I completely respect it. But let's not act like you wanted to fight me, because it isn't accurate.
With Gane and Alexander Volkov reportedly agreeing to a rematch at UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi, depending on how things play out, we could wind up seeing the stars align for a potential clash between Aspinall and Gane down the line. Now, let's shift gears and take a look at Julianna Pena calls out fighter for using steroids. Both Julianna Pena and Kayla Harrison are in the mix for a crack at Raquel Pennington's title, with Pena expected to be fighting for the belt in October. While Pena and Harrison aren't on a collision course for the time being, the former champ recently took aim at the Olympic judoka during Monday's episode of the MMA Hour, calling Harrison out for using PEDs. As she explained, during International Fight Week, various social media platforms held seminars for fighters before members of the UFC roster then gathered for an anti-doping presentation, which Pena says Harrison was absent for.
So it was like Meta, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, all these guys that are working those medias are there to teach us in the classroom everything that we need to learn about. So everyone was there.
Like a seminar.
Seminar, there you go. Okay. We broke for lunch. The next one up after that was the anti-doping thing. So everyone was there. Everyone, stayed for the first one. And then when we came back, everyone stayed for the second one, minus Kayla. She's the only one that didn't come back to the anti-doping room. It
didn't take long for Kayla Harrison to respond. In a post on social media, the Olympian reposted the video of Pena on the MMA Hour, along with a caption which read, "I've been tested by USADA since I was 12 years old. You'll find every excuse in the world not to fight me. And the only shot people need around you is anti-nausea medication." While Harrison called for an interim title fight with Pena after her UFC debut at UFC 300, a bout between the two doesn't seem to be in the works, with Pena instead insistent on fighting for the title. Khamzat Chimaev demands the UFC to give him the title shot next. In a recent interview, Khamzat revealed that he wants to fight in October in Abu Dhabi and he wants to fight for the title next. He claims that no other fighter who has won 7 fights in a row hasn't fought for a title and says that negotiations with Dana White have to happen constantly and is not easy at times. The MMA community roasted Khamzat for wanting the title fight next. Here's what fans had to say. 1 canceled fight and 1 crypto scam in 2024. Give my boy his title shot. #soon. I love Khamzat, but he absolutely does not deserve to fight for the middleweight belt. His most significant win at middleweight is Usman, who isn't even ranked at middleweight. On top of that, he's been scheduled to fight against 2 ranked middleweights, Costa and Whitaker, and he pulled out. He can't even make it to a fight. I wonder who his opponent will end up fighting after he pulls out for the 100th time. 7-fight win streak, undefeated. Why is Tony and Nick still on the roster and Khamzat shouldn't be on it? Bro has fought absolutely nobody that's any good at middleweight besides a welterweight Usman on a week's notice, and that was arguably a draw. Worry about making it to the cage first, you inbred knuckle dragger. He's got to learn how to fight off a cold first. Well, there's also no fighter who has constantly failed to show up for big title contention fights. It looks like he ducked Whitaker now that he's saying this nonsense. Fight for the what? Fight with your antibodies first before you get near that belt. We don't need you holding up the division because you can't fight. I think he ducked Rob. Top comments. It's not that the UFC didn't agree to the price for Whitman's gloves, it's that they wanted to own the company. They wanted him to give up his invention. I love how Alex wants Izzy to win, but Izzy has done nothing but bet on Alex to lose every time. But that hasn't happened. People still talking about McGregor versus Chandler is crazy. For a fight with no meaning that hold no significance in anything, people can't seem to stop pretending like it's gonna happen, like we need to see it or something. Chandler and Conor can retire right now and nothing will change, not one ranking. Nobody loves McGregor more than Muscle Milk Mike. We'd rather watch Sean do anything than Bilal.